Ancient Egypt did not exist in isolation. Its temples, rituals, gods, and symbols stood for thousands of years at the crossroads of Africa and the Mediterranean, shaping cultures far beyond the Nile. As merchants traveled, armies marched, and kingdoms rose and fell. Egyptian mythology quietly seeped into the beliefs of neighboring civilizations. Some adopted Egyptian gods directly, others reshaped their own traditions after encountering the spiritual world of the pharaohs. Over time, the influence of Egypt spread so widely that echoes of its mythology can still be felt across continents. One of the earliest regions touched by Egyptian belief was Nubia to the south. The Nubians worshipped many of the same godsmen, Isis, Horus, but blended them with their own traditions. In some periods, Nubian kings even took control of Egypt, ruling as the 25th dynasty and revitalizing temples with deep devotion. Their kingdom at Napata and later Meru carried Egyptian myth deep into the African interior, where it evolved into unique forms. Statues, pyramids, royal titles, and religious festivals all reflected a spiritual bond between the two lands. To the northeast, the peoples of the Levant Phoenicians, Canaanites, Hebrews absorbed Egyptian ideas through trade and diplomacy. Egyptian symbols appeared on amulets, pottery, and temple walls across the region. The goddess Hathor influenced depictions of Asherah. Egyptian protective spells blended with local practices, and the Ankh, the symbol of life, became a widely recognized sign of blessing. During periods of Egyptian rule in Canaan, officials brought their own gods with them, leaving traces that endured long after political control faded. To the northwest, the Mediterranean world encountered Egypt through Phoenician sailors who carried stories, artifacts, and religious motifs from port to port. Egyptian scarabs, amulets, and magical symbols spread across Cyprus, Malta, Sicily, and even Iberia. Mariners viewed Isis as a protector of ships long before Rome embraced her. And Egyptian ritual purity influenced early Greek mystery practices. But it was the Greeks who would be transformed most profoundly by Egyptian knowledge. Long before Alexander the Great arrived in Egypt, Greek travelers such as Herodotus wrote with awe about the wisdom of Egyptian priests, the ancient temples, and the mathematical precision of religious rituals. They saw Egypt as a land of mystery, magic, and divine knowledge, far older than their own civilization. Greek philosophers studied in Egyptian sanctuaries, Greek artists imitated Egyptian forms, and Greek religious ideas adopted Egyptian structure. By the time Alexander conquered the region, the cultural connection between Greece and Egypt was already centuries old. Egyptian mythology also moved westward into Libya, influencing desert tribes who adopted aspects of Neith, the warrior goddess. Shields and headdresses in Libya carried her symbols, and Egyptian-style funerary practices traveled across the Sahara. This quiet expansion of Egyptian belief was not forced. It spread because Egypt represented something powerful: stability, eternity, and divine order. In a world of shifting kingdoms and unpredictable wars, Egypt's mythology offered a sense of timelessness. Its gods were ancient, beyond imagining. Its rituals unchanged for millennia. People across the Mediterranean admired this constancy and incorporated fragments of it into their own traditions. By the late 1st millennium BCE, Egyptian religious ideas had become part of a much larger spiritual map. The Nile no longer marked the boundary of Egyptian mythology. Its influence stretched into Africa, Asia, and Europe. What began as the sacred world of one civilization became the shared heritage of many. This was only the beginning. For when Egypt met Greece during the rise of Alexandria, its mythology entered a new age, one that would reshape the ancient world forever. When Alexander the Great marched into Egypt in 332 BCE, he did far more than conquer a kingdom. He opened the door to to one of the most remarkable cultural fusions in ancient history. The meeting of Greek and Egyptian civilization created a new world where gods blended, philosophies intertwined, and mythologies evolved into forms that neither culture could have predicted on its own. This fusion produced what historians call the Hellenistic Revolution, and at its heart was Alexandria, a city destined to become the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Before Alexander's arrival, Greeks had long admired Egypt. They traveled to its temples to study astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and religious philosophy. They viewed Egypt as a repository of ancient wisdom, a place where the gods were older, the rituals deeper, and the mysteries far more profound. But with Alexander's conquest, admiration became integration. Instead of imposing Greek religion, he embraced Egypt's divine kingship, allowing himself to be crowned as a pharaoh in the Temple of Ptah. To the Egyptians, this act signaled respect. To the Greeks, it marked their first true encounter with living divine kingship. After Alexander's death, his general Ptolemy took control of Egypt and founded the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek royal house that ruled for nearly 3 centuries. Yet these rulers did not discard Egyptian tradition. They intertwined it with their own. Greek rulers were depicted as pharaohs, complete with crowns, uraeus cobras, and hieroglyphic inscriptions. Their queens adopted Egyptian divine identities, most famously Cleopatra VII, who styled herself as the goddess Isis reborn. The greatest symbol of this fusion was the creation of a new god, Serapis. Serapis combined aspects of Osiris and Apis with features of Greek gods such as Zeus, Hades, and Dionysus. He appeared as a bearded Greek deity but carried Egyptian symbols of rebirth and the underworld. His cult offered healing, salvation, and a personal connection with the divine qualities that resonated deeply with both Greeks and Egyptians. Serapis quickly became one of the most influential gods of the Hellenistic world, with temples stretching from Alexandria to Athens and even Rome. Alexandria itself became a bridge between mythologies. Its famous Library of Alexandria, the largest repository of knowledge in antiquity, gathered texts from across the Mediterranean. Egyptian priests worked alongside Greek scholars, translating sacred writings, comparing myths, and developing new theological interpretations. In this environment, Egyptian cosmology influenced Greek philosophy, especially the mystical traditions of the Hermetic texts, which blended Egyptian divine wisdom with Greek metaphysical ideas. These writings later shaped early Christianity, medieval alchemy, and Renaissance magic. Temples across Egypt also reflected this hybrid spirituality. At Philae, Isis was worshipped with rituals blending Greek and Egyptian practices. At Canopus, Serapis was venerated with music and incense familiar to both cultures. Meanwhile, Greek-style statues of Egyptian gods spread through the land, showing deities with human forms and naturalistic features instead of the traditional animal-headed figures. Yet their Egyptian identity remained unmistakable. The fusion was not one-sided. Egypt also absorbed Greek influences. Greek language became common in administration, art adopted more naturalistic styles, and philosophers reinterpreted Egyptian myths through the lens of Greek logic and symbolism. For example, the myth of Osiris came to be understood not only as a story of divine resurrection, but as an allegory of the soul's immortality, an interpretation developed by Greek thinkers like Plutarch. But despite this blending, the Egyptians maintained a deep sense of their own religious identity. The people continued to worship their gods in the old ways, even as new forms emerged. The fusion strengthened rather than weakened Egyptian mythology, giving it fresh interpretations and allowing it to travel far beyond the Nile. The Hellenistic Revolution marked a turning point. It transformed Egyptian religion into a Mediterranean religion. Its gods no longer belonged to a single land. They belonged to an entire world. And nowhere would this transformation become more powerful than in Rome, where one goddess rose above all others to claim the heart of an empire, Isis. As Egyptian mythology spread across the Mediterranean, no deity captured the imagination of foreign lands more completely than Isis. By the time Rome rose to dominate the ancient world, the Egyptian goddess had already become a figure of fascination in Greece, Nubia, and Asia Minor. But in Rome, her influence transformed into something far greater, something eternal. Isis became not just another imported deity, but a spiritual phenomenon, a goddess whose cult rivaled the greatest religions of the empire. Rome, with its diverse population and vast territories, constantly absorbed foreign gods. Yet Isis stood apart. Her story of loyalty, magic, motherhood, and resurrections spoke to universal human emotions. She was powerful, yet compassionate, divine, yet deeply connected to the struggles of ordinary people. Her ability to resurrect Osiris offered hope of life after death, a promise that resonated in an empire where mortality was ever present. By the 1st century BCE, temples dedicated to Isis began appearing in port cities across Italy. Sailors revered her as a protector of voyages, believing she calmed storms and guided ships safely to shore. Merchants carried her amulets, soldiers invoked her for courage, and women sought her blessings in childbirth. The cult spread rapidly among all classes, from slaves to aristocrats, creating a spiritual network, linked not by ethnicity or language, but by devotion to a universal mother. Roman writers like Appius described Isis as a goddess whose single divinity takes many forms, emphasizing her ability to transcend borders. In the famous work The Golden Ass, Isis appears as a radiant vision, promising salvation, guidance, and transformation. This portrayal had a profound impact on Roman spirituality, offering a personal relationship with the divine, something traditional Roman religion rarely provided. The temples of Isis, known as Azia, were unlike conventional Roman sanctuaries. They echoed Egyptian architecture, obelisks, sphinx, sacred lakes, incense, and hymns sung in exotic rhythms. Statues of Isis depicted her nursing the infant Horus, a symbol of divine motherhood that later influenced early Christian iconography of Mary and Jesus. Her priests shaved their heads, wore white linen robes, and performed rituals of purification, chanting prayers translated from ancient Egyptian liturgies. One of the most striking aspects of her cult was its promise of hope. Initiates believed Isis offered protection in life and salvation in death. Her ceremonies involved purification, sacred meals, and symbolic rebirth. Many Romans found comfort in the idea that a compassionate goddess watched over them personally, especially in a society where fate often felt harsh and unpredictable. Despite her popularity, the Roman government occasionally tried to suppress the cult of Isis. Some emperors feared foreign religions, worrying they encouraged loyalty beyond state control. Temples were torn down, only to be rebuilt by passionate followers. Even when banned, Isis's worship continued underground. Her influence was too deeply rooted to be erased. During the height of her popularity, magnificent temples to Isis rose across the empire. The Isium campaigns in Rome, with its grand columns and statues, became a focal point of worship. In Pompeii, frescoes depicting her rituals survived the eruption of Vesuvius. In London, Paris, Spain, and the Balkans, archaeology continues to reveal shrines dedicated to her, evidence of a goddess whose reach extended farther than any Egyptian could have imagined. Isis became more than a deity. She became a symbol of resilience. As empires rose and fell, as cultures blended and transformed, her cult adapted and thrived. She was worshipped by Greeks, Romans, Africans, Syrians, Celts, and even early philosophers who saw in her the embodiment of wisdom itself. Her influence persisted well into the Roman imperial era, and even after the rise of Christianity, memories of Isis survived in art, ritual, and symbolism. In many ways, Isis became the bridge between the ancient polytheistic world and the emerging spiritual traditions of late antiquity. Her promise of salvation foreshadowed new religious movements. Her iconography shaped artistic conventions for centuries, and her myths continued to inspire mystics, scholars, and seekers long after her temples closed. Through Rome, Isis achieved what no other Egyptian deity had. She became eternal, transcending time, culture, and empire. For more than 3,000 years, the gods of Egypt shaped every aspect of life birth, kingship, healing, protection, and the afterlife. Their temples dominated the landscape, their rituals ordered the world, and their myths guided the spirit. But no civilization is immune to change. Over centuries, new powers rose, new ideas spread, and slowly, the old religion of Egypt began to fade. Its decline was not sudden or violent. It was a long, quiet unraveling, woven from political shifts, cultural transformations, and spiritual revolutions. The first signs of this transformation appeared during the late Ptolemaic era. While Egyptian traditions remained strong, Greek influence increasingly shaped daily lives. Priests continued their ancient rituals, but Greek philosophy, literature, and political administration gradually took center stage. The temples still thrived, especially those dedicated to Isis, but the connection between rulers and the old gods weakened. When Cleopatra VII fell to Rome in 30 BCE, Egypt lost not just a queen, but its last pharaoh, the last divine ruler in a lineage stretching back to Narmer. Under Roman rule, Egyptian religion survived, but its foundation changed. The pharaoh had been the living link between gods and people, the maintainer of Maat, the sacred order. Without a pharaoh, the religion lost its central pillar. Roman emperors sometimes presented themselves as successors, but their connection to Egyptian divinity was symbolic at best. Temples remained active, yet their political power diminished, their wealth decreased, and their influence slowly eroded. Then came a far greater shift, the rise of Christianity. Christianity spread across the empire with remarkable speed, offering a unified faith that appealed to people of all backgrounds. Its promise of salvation, moral clarity, and personal connection to the divine resonated strongly, much like the cult of Isis had. As Christianity grew, it increasingly clashed with traditional polytheism. In Egypt, where magic, rituals, and sacred objects were woven into daily life, Christianity brought a new worldview. The old gods became pagan, their temples labeled remnants of a world fading into the past. Many Egyptians adopted the new faith, blending it with elements of their older traditions. Yet the shift was profound. Statues of Isis and Horus gave way to icons of Mary and Jesus, whose imagery had been shaped in part by Egyptian influence. The turning point came during the 4th and 5th centuries CE, when Christian emperors issued edicts against pagan worship. Temples lost their legal status, state funding ended, the priesthood dissolved. Many sanctuaries fell into disrepair. Others were repurposed as churches, and some were simply abandoned, left to the desert winds. One of the last great voices of the old religion was the temple complex at Philae, the final stronghold of Isis's worship. Even as Christianity spread across the empire, Philae continued performing traditional rituals well into the 6th century. Nubian kingdoms paid for its festivals, believing Isis still held power over their lands. But in 537 CE, Emperor Justinian ordered the closure of the temple. The last priests of Egypt extinguished the sacred flame, ending a tradition older than Rome itself. The decline of the old religion was not a single moment, but a gradual fading, a sunset that lasted centuries. The gods did not disappear. They simply grew quiet. Their names were no longer spoken in prayers, their rituals no longer performed at dawn, their festivals no longer celebrated by crowds along the Nile. Time reclaimed their temples. Sand buried their statues, and the desert wind echoed through the abandoned halls where worshippers once gathered. Yet even in decline, Egyptian mythology did not die. It transformed, its symbols reappeared in new forms. Its myths were retold in new languages. Its spiritual concepts shaped Christian monasticism, Hermetic philosophy, Gnostic writings, and medieval alchemy. The old religion fell silent, but its voice continued to echo. The gods of Egypt stepped back from the world, but the world never truly forgot them. Though the temples of ancient Egypt fell silent more than 1,000 years ago, the spirit of its mythology continues to live in ways both subtle and profound. Few ancient religions have shaped the modern world as deeply as Egypt's. Its symbols, myths, and spiritual ideas have traveled through time, appearing in art, architecture, literature, and even hidden corners of modern mystical traditions. The old gods may no longer rule the Nile, but their echoes still move quietly through the world. The rediscovery of Egypt began in the 18th and 19th centuries, when European explorers traveled up the Nile and encountered the colossal ruins of Luxor, Karnak, Abu Simbel, and the Valley of the Kings. These monuments sparked an era of fascination known as Egyptomania. Suddenly, Egyptian motifs appeared everywhere on buildings, in fashion, in furniture, even in cemeteries. Obelisks rose in city squares from Paris to Washington, D.C., carrying symbols that once belonged to pharaohs. The Sphinx became a global icon. Egyptian revival architecture shaped museums, banks, theaters, and memorials across Europe and America. But the influence ran deeper than aesthetics. Egyptian mythology, especially its spiritual concepts, began to shape Western esoteric traditions. The Hermetic texts, believed to preserve the ancient wisdom of Thoth, inspired Renaissance scholars searching for universal truths. These writings influenced alchemy, astrology, and early science. Alchemists saw in Osiris's death and resurrection a metaphor for transformation. Masonic lodges adopted Egyptian symbols, pillars, suns, and eyes seeing, in Egypt a metaphor for enlightenment. Even the tarot absorbed Egyptian themes, with the high priestess and magician echoing ancient archetypes of divine knowledge. The old myths also found a home in modern psychology. Carl Jung viewed Egyptian deities as archetypes of the human psyche: Horus, representing overcoming adversity, Isis symbolizing the nurturing mother, and Set embodying chaos and conflict. These figures appeared in dreams, literature, and cinema, carrying emotional truths that remain universal. Egypt also transformed popular culture. Movies, novels, and video games drew inspiration from mummies, pyramids, and ancient curses. Films like The Mummy, Stargate, and Gods of Egypt reimagined the old gods for new generations. Music videos, album covers, and fashion collections borrowed Egyptian imagery, using it to evoke mystery and majesty. Even superheroes trace roots to Egypt. Characters like Moon Knight and Apocalypse draw heavily from ancient myth. Yet one of the most profound modern echoes lies in spirituality. New Age and neo-pagan movements honor Isis, Bastet, Anubis, and Thoth as living symbols of transformation, protection, and wisdom. Altars dedicated to Egyptian deities stand in homes around the world. People meditate with ankhs, wear scarab jewelry for protection, or repeat ancient prayers translated from hieroglyphic texts. The myths that once guided pharaohs now guide individuals seeking meaning, healing, and inner balance. Egypt's afterlife beliefs continue to fascinate modern thinkers. The idea of the soul's journey, the weighing of the heart, and the eternal fields of Aru resonate with those exploring near-death experiences, reincarnation, and spiritual awakening. Books and documentaries reinterpret these traditions through the lens of psychology, philosophy, and comparative religion. The ancient Egyptians viewed life and death as a cycle, not an ending, and many modern seekers find comfort in that concept. Archaeological discoveries keep the ancient world alive. The uncovering of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 ignited global wonder. Recent finds, lost temples, unopened sarcophagi, newly revealed hieroglyphic texts continue to deepen our understanding of ancient beliefs. Technology, from CT scans to satellite imaging, reveals new details about mummification, rituals, and temple astronomy. Each discovery adds another layer to the story of a civilization that continues to teach, inspire, and mystify. In the end, the endurance of Egyptian mythology is not simply the survival of old stories, it is the persistence of an idea that the world is infused with meaning, that the cosmos is balanced by order and chaos, that life continues after death, and that humanity is forever searching for its place in the eternal. The gods may no longer walk the earth as the Egyptians once imagined, but their presence lingers in symbols, in stories, in art, and in the quiet corners of the human soul. The old religion fell silent, yet its echo still whispers through time, reminding us that nothing sacred is ever truly lost.